Welcome. We are in 303 and we turn now to Mr. Craig Conrad's volume Unstoppable, and we are now looking at chapter number 9, Walking the Walk. If you're looking in your journals, and I hope that you are, you will see that the focus here is this question about accepting a challenge or doing what you say you are going to do, that is to say, walking the walk. We'll have a couple of interesting stories now in this chapter. Let's go ahead and read together. Again, I'm with you on page 26 of the Unstoppable volume. I never owned a car until I was 21 years old. It was an old beat-up green Ford pickup truck. Since I had no money left after paying for college, Dad co-signed the loan. As we left the bank that day, Dad told me I'd better not miss a payment. I never did. This isn't my sob story. It's how I was raised. If you want it, you earn it. I'm okay with that. What I wasn't okay with when I started teaching was the number of kids that had cars, many of them brand new. Most of them purchased by Mom and Dad. Several times I heard kids say that they wanted a new car for their 16th birthday. Plus, they demanded their folks get it for them. Now, a car is a big want at age 16, big enough that some kids will do anything to get one, including having the discipline to work for it. For those kids, I've always had the utmost respect. But to buy your kid a car just because they turn 16 robs them of that child's want, quote unquote. Many parents fail to realize that by giving their kids a car, they are stealing that child's master key, the self-discipline that leads to, if you want it, earn it. One Friday in September, I told my class this story. I don't remember where I first heard it. A father was on his way to work one day when he spotted his 8th grade son hitching a ride to school. That night at the dinner table, Dad asked his son if he wanted to be a great athlete. Of course I do, the son replied. Well then, you should be running to school, not hitching a ride, Dad said. But Dad, we live 9 blocks from the school. My goodness, I didn't know it was that far. A kid could die in 9 blocks. Naturally, this teenager responded, well, Dad, I guess you walked when you were a kid, didn't you? His father, not unlike most fathers, not only said yes, but went on to say, quote, I walk 9 miles every morning and 9 miles back uphill both ways, some days through 9 feet of snow, end quote. All good dads embellish the truth from time to time. It's because the older they get, they truly believe the better they were. So father and son made a deal that night. If the son could walk to school every day, no matter the conditions, he would get a prize. One dark, dreary morning, it was pouring rain outside. Dad was drinking his morning coffee when his son came downstairs and looked out the window. It sure is raining out there, Dad. Dad said, it sure is. His son said, sure looks cold and dreary out there. Dad said, it sure does. What do you think, Dad? His boy asked. I think you're going to get wet, said Dad. His son went on to win the prize. What did he win? What was the prize? My students always ask. I honestly tell them I don't know what he won, but perhaps I do. Many years later, this boy would become a coach. He was flying to Indiana on a recruiting trip. The pilot who was flying the twin-engine plane got lost, and the plane crashed in the mountains. It was cold, dark, and pouring rain that night. The pilot was killed on impact, and the boy who walked to school climbed out of the wreckage that night as a man. Through the rain, fog, and in the darkness, he saw a light 3 miles away. This would become the most important walk of his life. He walked to the light, thanks in part to his dad. You see, the real prize he gave his son was the master key. That key, that night, helped his son unlock the most important door of his life. When I finished telling that story to my class, I gave them a warning. What I'm about to say next is my opinion. That doesn't mean it's right. That doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just my opinion. Having lived in your town for the past many years, I feel I'm qualified to say this. You're spoiled. I use the student parking lot as evidence to support my claim. The majority of students who are of legal driving age have cars, many of which are brand new, and were just given to them. They never had to work for them. This really fired him up. So much so that 2 of them asked for permission to prove me wrong by counting the cars parked in the student parking lot. When they returned, they were slapping each other high fives and laughing. "You were wrong, Mr. Conrad. There's only 197 cars in the student parking lot." "Only 197, I said. "That's right," they said. "And there's about, what, 600 kids in our school," I said. I told them that half of that population was freshmen and sophomores. They aren't old enough to drive. So out of 300 juniors and seniors, almost 200 drive to school each day, many of them with several others in their cars. "I think that proves my point," I told them. That's when the discussament heated up. A discussament is usually what takes place when you discuss something with a teenager. You have a discussion, they have an argument. It's a discussament. During our discussament, one of the boys who counted the cars argued and defended his driving to school, even though he only lived a few blocks away. I kept discussing the advantages of walking to school. I explained the health, financial, and environmental benefits to leaving the vehicle at home. He kept arguing his need to drive his truck to school every day. The truck his dad gave him. Finally, after sensing he was losing the argument, he screamed, "Well, if it wasn't for my truck, I'd be walking to school every day." I held my arms up in the air and said, "Thank you." Not realizing what he had just said, and still pretty hot, he screamed back, "Thanks for what?" I calmly thanked him again for agreeing with me. I was laughing the whole time. "You just verified what I'm saying this entire time," I chuckled. After he finally realized what he said, he turned and walked away. I was still laughing. He didn't sign my master key list that day. 50-some kids did sign up and accepted my crazy challenge to walk to school. Some of our kids live 40 miles from town. Those kids opted to do 2 laps around the track each day. I promised those who completed the challenge a prize when they finished. I would give them a Master Key Award. However, I told them they would find their own real prize along the way. That first year of the challenge, there were 27 days where the temperature was below 0 or it was snowing. 27 days of extreme weather conditions. 27 times the kids could have said, "This is crazy." 27 times it would have been easy to quit. 27 times they could have packed it in. Many did. However, 7 of those kids refused to quit. As promised, those 7 kids received their Master Key Awards. They also received a standing ovation from more than 500 people at awards night. That was the prize they received from me. Just wait till you hear what they gave themselves. It's what I told them they would find along the way that would ultimately be the real prize. Let's pause for a moment and make a couple of quick observations. We've been studying Tintern Abbey, Wordsworth's poem, and we made the observation that, it sometimes might make sense that if someone in your life has committed little, nameless, unremembered acts of kindness and of love to you and for you, that maybe you would say, "Thank you." If your parents have at least furnished you with mode of transportation, it probably does make sense to at least remind yourself to say, "Thank you." A second observation. What challenge are you prepared to give yourself? I mean, walking to school is obviously one potential one. But it might make sense for you to ask this question. Is there a challenge I can give myself, which I can then make sure that I can accomplish, which in some ways allows me to gain that master key of self-discipline? The last question is, of course, why this chapter is so controversial. He makes the argument that young people today in high schools are spoiled. Do you think that's true? Do you, as you study, for example, yourself, your colleagues, your classmates, the rest of the students at Worland High School, do you think it's true that on some level we are a bit spoiled, soft, we might even say weak? And how, if you realize that might be the case for you personally, how can you get stronger? What do you think is the way that you can begin to improve walking the walk, as Mr. Conrad will call it? Thank you. Chapter 9 of Unstoppable.